let's talk about something that you probably have never heard about in church before. Keywords, we're going to start with Tanin, which is sea monster, sea dragon, serpent. There's other ways it could be translated. Unfortunately, I don't love that other translations have done this. Sometimes they'll do it as like great sea creatures. Like I think it was the New King James and the ESV, a couple others where they put it as great sea creatures, which in my head kind of sounds like you're talking about whales and other things. But that's not what the word really means. I mean, it can be used of a giant fish or a whale, but in terms of its etymology and everything that goes behind it, it's technically more serpent focused. You have nachash, which can be translated as snake, serpent, dragon, sea serpent. We actually looked at this word a couple months ago. So nachash is often of a land creature, but we'll see in a minute why this is a keyword to be tracking with Tanin. And then you have Leviathan, which appears 6 times. And that is where we get Leviathan, sometimes sea creature. But the reason I want to focus on these ones is, one, they're probably the most obvious to us, at least in language, but also Isaiah uses them all synonymously of each other. A thing that we notice a lot with the biblical authors, where they take words that are not necessarily the same, or they are, and then they use them interchangeably. Isaiah 27:1 reads, "In that day, Yahweh with his heart and great strong sword will punish Leviathan, the fleeing Nachash, Leviathan, the twisting Nachash, and he will slay the Tanin that is in the sea." All 3 words to describe the exact same thing. They're all describing Leviathan, the sea monster that God is going to crush, who is this serpent, this twisting serpent, fleeing serpent. Very important language because it's going to reappear in the next few texts we're about to look at. The ancient people had this very, I would argue, appropriate fear of the sea because they have no idea what's out there. We can't control it, and it destroys things when it gets like all chaotic and stormy. It will destroy everything. And there are sea creatures down there that they can't see, and we still can't see. And, you know, when you see a whale, you might only see like a tail, or you might only see part of a sea creature or something. So it's not like today where we send cameras down there, we can see more stuff. They have absolutely no idea what's down there except for fish that when they go fishing. So they're afraid of this water. They're like, this is terrifying. We can't control it. There's stuff in there that we don't understand. We still don't understand it. We still can't really control it. And so there was this common motif or term or story, as we'll see in a minute, that deals with chaos monsters or sea monsters or people or gods acting and becoming sea monsters and creatures and all that kind of fun stuff. Some of it is tied to creation, and some of it is tied to just mythology and fighting and stuff. We're going to look at a couple key ones, probably the more popular ones and the ones that are the most obvious. Some of the other ones we might just reference in passing. So, ancient cultural context. Another thing that we're about to do that I guarantee you're going to hear some stories that I don't think anyone's ever heard in Sunday school. Then again, that's not totally the purpose of Sunday school, but still, who really sits down and reads the Enuma Elish, for instance, in the middle of Sunday school? That'd be a wild ride. That'd be a Sunday school I would want to go sit in on. Wait, that's kind of what we're doing right now. All right, starting with one text of many. One, the Akkadian creation epic known as the Enuma Elish. It's also tied in with Babylon a little bit. A lot of these texts, I'll say in the front end, they sometimes will circle around each other, or they'll take from each other, or just completely adopt. So like you'll find Babylon using the Enuma Elish much, much later. But in Ugarit, which is also kind of within a Babylonian religion sect, they have a different myth that they follow. Akkadian, Enuma Elish, probably one of the more popular ones, one of the ones that are more well-known. So, Apsu, who is the elder god, desires to kill the younger gods because they're annoying. Does not like their noise. He and Tiamat really do not like it, but Apsu specifically does not like it, and his plan is he's going to kill them all. Tiamat, his wife, doesn't quite approve of this. They're their offspring. She doesn't want them to be gone. She thinks they're annoying, but she doesn't want them gone. I'm kind of taking a little bit of a jab at it, but that's effectively what's going on. He's really annoyed with their sound. He's going like, I'm going to kill them. And she's like, let's not kill them. They are annoying us. Let's just get them to shut up. So she goes to warn them in hopes that they'll just shut up, more like a warning. But instead, the younger gods then just make a plan and send Ea to go and kill Apsu. This really ticks off Tiamat, and now she starts spawning off all these different monsters to go kill the younger gods as Apsu originally wanted. And then we're going to speed through this a little bit. You eventually get Marduk, who is born to two other gods, who then comes in and fights Tiamat, teams up with some of the other gods to fight the other monsters. He fights her, kills her, rips her in half, and her top half becomes a thing that separates the waters above, and her bottom half protects the waters that are below. That's Marduk in very short. I have a whole lot more there you can look at. This comes from like tablets 3 and 4 specifically we're looking at. Like I said, Marduk is the child of Ea, who's the one who killed Apsu and Damkina, and he's given this authority to go fight Tiamat and rule as if he is going to become the king god. He is also the storm god, effectively. So we have a storm god that's going to go fight this creature, where if you look at like different archaeological stuff like stones, you find that Tiamat's depicted as this monster, sometimes multi-animal, sometimes more serpentine. And so Tiamat is sometimes attributed to this idea of this chaos creature. She also birthed chaos creatures to kill the other gods. And so, as I said, Marduk fights her with lightning, fire, and all that stuff, kills her, rips her in half, and you get the sky and the waters below. That's the Akkadian creation epic. Very, very short. It is far more wild. It's actually kind of fun to read. It's a fun story because it's just so wild, and it's a poem. It's written as a poem, so it's told in this very weird way, and you're just kind of keeping up with it. And sometimes it gets into dialogue, sometimes it describes it, sometimes it just says this is what happens, and you just kind of have to deal with it. So that's Marduk rips up a goddess, and she becomes the sky and the water. Ugarit. This is probably one of the more important ones. The reason why I say it's probably the more important one is because the Ugaritic stuff, their language, in terms of their word structure, is much closer to Hebrew than some of the other ones. So they're one of the sources that we use their text to help us kind of understand some Hebrew words that we just don't have enough information on. So they're very important to understand their texts if you're going to dive into Hebrew. You don't have to necessarily learn Ugarit, but that's they have a lot of shared pronunciations, constructions, grammar, other things, and that's why we kind of get some of the better understand what some of the words today are, because we found some of these tablets and stuff like, oh, that's what that word means, because we have no other Hebrew reference to help us understand. And we're like, we see what's going on here, and they're talking about the same thing. Cool. So this one's important. It's also important because this is the Baal cycle, aka Babylon's great god that the Bible talks about a lot in conflict with. So this one is different. The first one's more of a creation story with Akkadia. This one is not so specific on that. It's just a myth. And by myth, I mean it's a story that is describing something that was very real to them. They didn't thought it was like fiction, but it was something that they thought to be very real to them, explain the world around them. So Baal has great tension with Yam, who is the god of the sea, which is, hey, by the way, the same Hebrew word that we use for sea. Yam is just with one less M. So they have Yam with two M's, and we have Yam with one M. And Baal, who is, once again, a storm god and vegetation god. I think we're going to start seeing a pattern here, that there's a storm god who is usually involved. And the tension leads to different tablets being sent back and forth between the two of them. That is threatening battle. Yam specifically wants to rule over the gods, and Baal is the son of El, who is the head god, and Yam wants to rule over, and he's like, I'm going to kill Baal. Obviously, Baal's not okay with this, and of course, they go to battle, as all the gods tend to do. So, to read from Tablet 2, column 4, expel Yam from his throne, Nahar from the seat of his dominion, leap from Baal's hand like a raptor from his fingers, strike the head of Prince Yam between the eyes of Judge River. May Yam sink and fall to the earth. The weapon leaps from Baal's hand like a raptor from his finger. It strikes the head of Prince Yam between the eyes of Judge River. Yam collapses and falls to the earth. His joints shake and his form collapses. Baal drags and dismembers. Yam destroys Judge Rivers. So we go from this command to go fight him to now there's an actual fighting. Again, this is a poem, so they kind of just bleed through time. They're not concerned about an actual narrative. It's like, here, you should go do this. And then he's doing it. He fights Yam, he beats Yam, and Baal is then proclaimed king because Yam is conquered. He's dead. Not is his sister. You think we'd be done. We're not. The Baal cycle keeps going, but we're going to go through it quickly. So Anat also has been going to war. It's believed to be by some scholars that she might have aided in fighting some of Yam's like sea creatures and monsters, because she's credited as one who fought Yam, but Baal's one who's described as fighting Yam, but she fought off the sea creatures that were Yam's people, which would then mean that effectively is fighting Yam. It's kind of like the whole representative fighting. And you can kind of see that in the text. Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, okay.
Yep. So she fights off some of his sea monsters, and she also wins. So this seems to be the same where they aided each other. He dealt more with Yam. She dealt more with the sea monsters. Baal sends messengers to Anat because he's whining about the fact that he doesn't have a palace and all the other ones do, and he's not happy about that, especially if he's now king. So she aids in helping him try to get one. We're going to skip ahead a whole lot here, several columns later. Mot, another Hebrew word, also meaning death, but Mot wants Baal to invite Mot to fight him. And he's like, yo, invite me over to fight you. So we're again getting this whole like, hey, we're sending these messages back and forth. We're being very nice. Let me come kill you. Let me come fight you. Let me be king. No. And so they go fight. We then get into some weird territory where when they go to find what happened after the battle, it is believed to be that Baal is dead because they find his body. But also, there's a vision much later that Baal is still alive. Question is, what's going on here? Mot is like, yeah, I found this body. I found Baal and I ate him. And so, Anat and another goddess goes down to fight him to get Baal back. Because they're thinking that he might be in the underworld. But Mot's like, he ain't here. And then El has this vision that Baal is still alive, which is why most scholars really kind of argue that he probably, because he's a vegetation god, he probably every other vegetation, just kind of like grew back. Not like resurrected, but was like, went through a cycle. Cough, cough, Baal cycle, hence the name. And so he kind of went he just kind of withered and then rebirth. Didn't really die, but he did, but he didn't. They just know, hey, he's back. Cool. Now let's go kill Mot. And then they fight, and ta-da, Baal is king again because he's the dude. He's the Marduk of Ugarit. So we have this whole thing where the storm god fights death. This representative death fights the representative sea monsters. Similar story as we have with Acadia. Now we go to India with the Rig Veda. It's our first Veda, 1.32. And it's a hymn, 15 verses, and it depicts heroic deeds of the deity Indra and his battle with the dragon Vritra. And so Indra uses a thunderbolt to strike the dragon on his neck and cut him up. The dragon lays dead after his challenge against Indra. Indra also strikes and splits the waters. Sounds very familiar. Storm god goes to fight this dragon, splits the waters, splits the dragon. Interesting. And then I provide the verses if you want to check those out later, just so you know I'm not making stuff up. It's right there. And now we go to Hittites. They have two versions of this. We'll go with the older one first and the newer one. So I'll give you a guess. Who's the conflict between storm god and a dragon? We have the storm god and the dragon Ilyankas, who came to grip in Kiskilusa. The dragon Ilyankas vanquished the storm god. The storm god besought all the gods. He's like, okay, so he loses to the dragon. He's like, hey, all the other gods, come with me and help me to destroy this. We're going to prepare a celebration. We're going to destroy this thing. Because sometimes the storm god loses once and then goes to fight again with Mot and Baal, or sometimes they win the first try. Marduk and Tiamat, they just kind of go in dead. This storm god seems to have lost the first time and has to go in again. So Anaris took Hupasias to the place and hid him, and Anaris put on her finery and lured the dragon Ilyanka up from his lair. See, I am holding a celebration. Come thou to eat and to drink. The dragon comes up with his children. They eat and drink. They drink every amphora, dry and quench their thirst. Thereupon they are no longer able to descend to their lair. Hupasias comes and trusts the dragon Ilyanka with a rope, and the storm god came and killed the dragon Ilyanka, and the gods were with him. So dragon dead. Dragon's killed. However, there's a later version that the Hittites have. Similar, but it provides a little extra details. So I'll provide those extra details. The dragon, Ilyanka, vanquished the storm god and took his heart and his eyes away from him. The storm god now wants to get revenge and instructs his son, when thou goest to the house of thy wife, because his wife is the spawn of the dragon, ask them for my heart and my eyes. When he went there, he asked them for the heart, and they gave that to him. Later, he asked for the eyes, and they gave him those too. He brought them to the storm god, his father. Thus, the storm god got back his heart and his eyes when his frame had been restored to its old state. He left to the sea for battle. When he engaged the dragon Ilyanka in battle, he came close to vanquishing him, but the son of the storm god, who was with Ilyanka, shouted up to heaven to his father, "Count me as with them, spare me not." So the storm god killed the dragon Ilyanka and his son too. In this way, the storm god got even with the dragon Ilyanka. Again, storm god fights a dragon in the sea. Chaos ensues. There are other tales as well. Egypt has their own. It's more closer to like the Genesis 3 type of like there's a deceiver serpent present. Because their creation deals more with the fact that there's the noon, which is the water, which is personified, but it's not recognized as a deity, but is personified as a deity. But it's more of a describing of its eternal waterness. And then up from the water comes from Ra Atum for when he's in night, and Ra for when he's in the daytime, who then does some weird stuff in the water and gives birth to the other gods. And so there's not much fighting there, but still born out of water, gross details later, and ta-da, more gods appear. One of which eventually ends up being like the Apophis, who is the serpent that is sketchy because he's trying to trick people into doing wicked and stupid things. A good resource for just kind of understanding the different other cultural stuff would be the dragon, the mountain, and the nations. What we find is pretty much majority of the ancient Near East shared this language. So it's very commonly known. It wasn't worldwide, but it's very much well known. So for the biblical authors, it was effectively worldwide because it was their world. It was like, as a couple of people I've listened to call it one of the first worldwide memes. A lot of these texts either date slightly before the Bible, around the same time as the Bible. What we do know is that at least what historians have been stating is that by the nature of them and the fact that the text all seem to stem from something else, this means that this is probably more of a prehistoric story that stems from something, aka prior to writing. It's pre-written history that we can actually trace down. And so there's a point in time where there's probably a spawn for this whole dragon myth that then just spread through all the neighboring nations because families, and so they share these. We don't know exactly where it spawned from, but the fact that all the texts have them seems to be that there is some kind of source that goes back to prehistoric, before there were tablets, before there was writing. So it's an old myth. It's an old description of either how creation came to be, how the gods act, variety of other things, not unfamiliar at all to the biblical authors, as we'll see. So I preface with all of that because we're going to see a lot of language where you can see sometimes where either they're playing with it or they're directly quoting it. In one of them, I can't remember which one, I mentioned the phrase, it was Isaiah. It mentions the fleeing and twisting serpent. That comes from these. It's attributing this Leviathan to the same thing. It comes from Baal and from the Enuma Elish. It is a description of this chaos monster that is within the water, this twisty serpent, this slippery serpent. And so you're going to find this within these texts as well as within the biblical text as their way of describing Leviathan.